Hello friends and welcome to my channel, Finishing the Score. I am here with the fabulous Michael Radi, aka Musical Theater Writer Guy. I am so excited to share this Dorico tutorial video collab with you all. Michael,
Yes, and if you missed it, part one of this collaboration is living on my channel, Music Theater Writer Guy, and that has been up for a couple weeks at this point, and it's got a lot of the foundational information in it. And today we're going to be diving a little bit deeper into our quick start guide. But all of this is again to make sure that for those of us who don't currently use Dorico, that we are learning how to do so in a way where we can get started while we do our deep dive. Because Julie, you seem to do a really nice job of keeping the simple stuff up for us, but I see a lot of extra features in there as well. Seems like you can really go far.
there's a lot of things you can do with it, and that's going to be the focus of today's video. So if you're really interested in learning about the basics, just getting started in Dorico, go ahead and head over to Michael's channel and see that first video. And what we're going to be talking about today is more of the advanced features, kind of layout options, playback, printing, and the all-important music XML import. So keep watching if you're interested in any of those. Um, all right. Anything you want to mention before we get right into it?
Just, I think one other thing, friends, is know that this is not going to be fully comprehensive across these two parts. There will be other things that you probably have questions on. Please feel free to leave comments on either of our videos, and we will do our best to supply answers as they come in. Just know that Julie here is the expert. I am not, but I'm very happy to pass anything along if you comment on my video.
Perhaps the Dorico expert, but both of us are musical theater writers, so we are approaching this from a musical theater writer perspective, and Michael is very well versed in Sibelius and Finale, so brings that expertise to the table as well. So let's go ahead and get right into it. I am going to share my screen.
Beautiful.
Can you see Dorico okay?
Oh, I see her. She's beautiful.
Amazing. All right. There was one feature that I couldn't find during last video that I want to mention for anyone who watched that video, and that was if you're recording the MIDI with your MIDI keyboard to a click track, what the quantization settings were. So I just quickly wanted to hit that for anyone who missed it. That is Edit, Preferences, and then under Play, you can scroll down, and under Quantization, you can change your granularity for what you're playing in when you're MIDI recording. So, great, that's out of the way. For anyone who missed it last time, I am using Dorico Pro 5. That is the current version. It's 5.1 point something at this point. Many of the features that I am showing today are only available in Dorico Pro. I just want you to all be aware of that. There's a great cross-grade option available right now, but some of the more advanced layout features, if you want to lay them out yourself, you may need to get the Pro version. My understanding is that if you don't have the Pro version and someone else makes a template for you, you can still use that template. So you don't need to have Dorico Pro if you want to use a custom template. You would just need someone else to help you create that. So,
I do also want to mention, and
yeah.
uh, correct me if I'm wrong, Julie, but I don't think either of
Mhm.
us are affiliates for Dorico, correct?
That is correct. Not
Okay.
affiliated with Dorico. Yes.
All right. Well, that being said, friends, yes, there's a great cross-grade price, which I was eyeing, and will be utilizing at some point. But also, they're doing a special right now. So if you are coming into notation software for the first time, this is your first purchase of a pro software. I believe it's currently like 50% off. So I would do that while the iron's hot, for sure.
Yes, indeed. All right. So if you recall from last video, in our basic Dorico setup, there are 5 modes up here. We spent time in setup and write mode last time, and we're going to look at the other 3 today. So let's go ahead and start with engrave mode. Um, and there is a mindset shift that I think users coming from Finale or Sibelius should be aware of when moving into this piece of software, which is the music content is really like the king in Dorico, and you want to start there before you touch any adjustments to your formatting. So like you really want to get as far as possible in write mode with entering all your notes, entering all your notations and everything before you start making any customized changes inside layout mode, because Dorico does a pretty good job of laying things out by default, but if you've like made a bunch of customizations and then you change the musical content, then things can look a little funky because your customizations don't necessarily line up anymore with the musical content that you created. So just something to be aware of. When you enter engrave mode, there's a couple of different tools that you might see here. This first one here, graphical editing, this is intended for you to be able to basically click on anything and like make all sorts of like visual graphical changes to it. Write mode is where you change the musical content, so like pitch of the note, length of the note. In engrave mode, you cannot change any of those things, but you can make it look all sorts of different ways. You could, if you have a slur, you could change the shape of your slur. Here is a dynamic that I picked, and I can change like the text alignment and all sorts of funky things. And oh, something funny just happened. That was interesting. Oh, here, it realigned this because I have chords shown on all of my vocalists, and so now this staff doesn't fit on the previous page. That is an interesting sidebar, but we don't have to get into that right now. But the idea is that, like in engrave mode, you have the ability to make specific shifts in position to things, or change the properties down at the bottom. Let me zoom in for a moment here, just so we're looking at things. So yeah, if in write mode, like looking at this text block, for example, if I move it, you can see that it's actually snapping to specific positions in the bar. And so that's like where on the staff is it attached to. But then when you go to engrave mode, you have, you know, all sorts of place that you can move it around. But you can see that the red line is connecting to that same point in the bar. So it knows that that's where it's connected to in the music. So that's this first one, just the idea that you can like nudge things around if you see fit. The next one I want to talk about is frames, and I think as musical theater writers, this is something that's very useful to us if you're setting up a piano vocal score, as we're looking at right here. This is the piano vocal score for To the Lighthouse that I'm currently working on.
It's beautiful.
I've created.
It's gorgeous.
Yay! Thank you. I've created this lovely layout using frames. So frames. Let me expand this side panel here so we have a little bit more information. There are 3 different types of frames in Dorico. You have a music frame, which is blue. This one is a music frame. We have text frames, which are green. Here is a text frame. And then you have graphical frames. So if you have a picture you want to put in, you can enter a graphical frame. I have never had a need to do such a thing, but I think if you're like a teacher making worksheets or something, like that's something that might come in handy, or you want a logo in a footer. You can create frames right onto a layout like that if you want, but I actually don't recommend that if you want to have something that propagates throughout your whole piece. So we'll look at how you create a template that basically covers all of your pages in a moment. Before I do, I want to talk about the way that music frames work in Dorico. So a music frame is basically a series of, it's generally like one frame per page, one of these blue frames, and the musical content that you've entered in write mode will begin in this first frame, and then it will flow into the next frame, which is on the next page, and then the next one, and then the next one, and so on until your song is over, basically. So that is how music frames work, and Dorico will use a series of rules as defined in your settings to determine how to format that music, basically. I'm going to, for a moment, go into, on the library menu up top here, library layout options. And selecting from my layouts on the right here, I'm selecting my piano vocal score. And under page setup, there's a number of different options that you can change for that layout. So one of them, for example, that you might change a lot is the space size for your staff. So I'm currently on size 4, but let's say I really want some tiny, tiny music. Apply. I close that. You can see that now the staff size is much smaller, and because of the spacing, Dorico is now calculating differently how the music fits inside that musical frame. So a lot more fits in, and then it continues flowing, and it just needs fewer pages at this point. I'm going to undo that change.
But this always stays within the blue box, correct?
Correct.
We're
yes.
never going to have an issue where it runs up into our green frames.
Well, you have hit on a particular limitation of Dorico right now that is actually one of my personal frustrations and is on my list of feature requests for Dorico, is that at this current time, so it does a very good job of managing keeping the staff within the box. You can see right now the staff, here's the top of the blue box here, but this text, which is attached to my staff, is above that blue box. And the same could be true if you have something that extends at the bottom, that can extend outside of the blue box. And Dorico has mentioned in the past that this is something that is a little bit challenging from a graphical standpoint, but there are ways to deal with this, and I can get into that when we get to that tool. But for the most part, other than those particular exceptions, the music does flow from one to the next in a very nice way that avoids collisions and
Right.
maintains correct spacing of notes and lyrics and all of that.
Beautiful.
You can see in this case it's leaving room for pedal markings, and it's leaving room for chord symbols, and all of these are displaying nicely without the dynamic here running into the lyric, for example. You can see, to your point here, that this text box at the top is going over the green box. So yes, some limitations in terms of that, in terms of auto laying out. So that is what I wanted to say about frames before we get into the custom laying out of frames. I'm going to keep going down on these tools, and then we'll get into the custom setup. So this tool is the staff spacing tool, and this is the tool that basically allows you to fix this collision. So the boxes on this staff here are allow you to move these around. So if I click this large box, it's going to move all 3 of these staves together like that. And you can see the text, because it's attached to the staff, moves with this. So if I move that up and down, it clears it. But I almost never just click and drag like that when I want to resolve these collisions at the top of the page, because now I'm going to have to move that one, and then I'm going to have to move that one, and etc.
Hmm.
So what I do, if you press Alt and then drag it, do you see how it's actually moving the staves below it?
Mm-hmm.
So that Alt drag down is how you resolve the collisions at the top of the page if you
Right.
have them. One very non-obvious thing that I will point out to everyone, if you want to delete that custom setting, you click on any box that's red. The red box indicates that something is different about this. And you click and you hit the delete key. And that will eliminate those customizations. But because you also dragged the stuff above, it created customizations on this one too. So I'm going to delete those, and I'm going to delete those as well.
Okay.
So that's the staff spacing tool. And of course, like if you want to click on one of these boxes alone, you could do that. So you could do really silly piano parts or whatever you want to do. You never know. Someone might want a silly piano part.
It happens.
Yeah. And then the final tool, which I very rarely use, but it may be useful to someone, is the like left-right spacing of notes. So maybe there's some weird formatting with the word where it's not working correctly. Oops. Okay, so this one, because I don't use this tool a lot, it's not super intuitive to me. You cannot actually, as far as I am aware, click and drag these. So you have to use the key command that is the same as write mode for moving notes, which is Alt. What is Alt on Mac?
Option.
Yeah, Alt or Option, and then left and right. And so what I'm doing right now is moving this to the left, but interestingly, what I'm seeing happen is it's actually just, because it's justifying the whole thing, it's just taking away the space from that neighboring rest. But I could do the same thing on this note, for example. Move that to the right, etc. So that's how you change spacing of notes if you really need that to be custom. Going over to the right-hand panel right now, let's start at the top here with pages. So you'll see that I've got these pages shown in left-right spreads here. So what I'm looking at right now is a right-hand page with page number 1. And actually, let me quickly mention, there are these 4 down at the bottom here, 4 different views. We're looking at single page vertically right now. I generally like to do spreads vertically like this, and then zoom out a little bit so that it's easier to see which is a left and a right page when I'm doing this layout stuff. This is particularly useful if you're laying out a piano vocal score or something that you want to have page turns that are in a good spot. So you can basically just have this view, look at the bottom right corner and be like, is this a good spot? Do I need to adjust this? Etc. Okay. Okay, back to pages here. So do you see how this one has a little red triangle at the top? That means that this one has a page override. So any of the changes that I just made, either by creating a frame on it, by moving a staff spacing, by moving note spacing, any of those is considered a page override. And basically, if you have a page override on that and then you make changes in your template, it will not propagate to that page because that page has been customized. And this is the primary reason why we want to wait until the very end to do any of your adjustments in engrave mode.
Makes sense.
So if you have made changes to something and you're like, hey, I didn't actually want changes to that, you can right click on that page and either remove page overrides on this page, or if you click remove all page overrides, that will remove them from all of the pages in your entire layout. So just be very clear about what it is that you want to do here. In this case, I'm going to remove page overrides just on that one. And that should get rid of the note spacing. I think maybe it's overrides related to frames. It looks like it doesn't get rid of note spacing changes. Or staff spacing changes. So it's frames is what this is. I'm learning even things in my own video.
Hey, look at that.
Yeah, look at that.
In case you were wondering if this was planned or live, everybody.
Hey. All right. So let's talk about page templates, which I think is something that a lot of people are going to be interested in. So this was a little bit confusing to me when I first started, so I'll try to explain as simply as possible. You're going to want to start at the bottom here with page template sets. And what you see here is, I think generally when you load a Dorico project, it's going to create a default full score and default part. And each of those has some different formatting associated with it. You know, the violin part would be a default part, and the full score would have all your instruments in it. So these template sets are created down here. When you have such a thing created, then you go into this section, page templates, and you can see the current set for the part that you're on, for the layout that you're on, will be listed in this drop down. So right now I'm in my piano vocal layout, and it's currently using my default full score layout in this project. You'll notice that I also have been playing around with a blind submissions version of this, which basically like same layout, but just strips out like composer and lyricist name if you want to quickly export something for submissions.
Nice.
Inside your page template sets, you will always have two different page types. A first page type is basically for the first page of your flow, and if you recall correctly from the setup mode, down here are your flows, and in the case of a musical theater piece, each flow is generally a song in your show. So the first page layout will apply to the first page of every flow, and the default page layout will apply to all of the other pages. So this one is a first page layout, so it's got the title and the number up here, etc. And then this is a default page layout.
Great.
The thing that most confused me when I first started, so watch out for this, is if you want this to be your format, what I did first was like, okay, like I'm in the frames tool, I'm just gonna go ahead and make some text frames on this thing. But you can see that like added it just to page one as a page override. So I spent all this time getting a nice format in engrave mode proper, like without going into the templates side. And I was very frustrated to learn that I had to get rid of it and start over. So be careful about that. If you want to edit your template, click on the template you want to edit and then hit this little pencil to edit that template. And so then you're going to get this layout in here where you can edit the frames in your template. And you can see that it's got a left and right version. It just so happens that for me that's identical, but let's say you wanted the page number to be always on the outside corner. This is how you could define how those would be different. So let's just zoom in on our header here, because in my template there's nothing below the music frame. Everything is in the header. So oops, let's zoom in. All right, so in these various green boxes I have these funky looking text things which are called tokens. A token is essentially a variable that will be populated by info from either the project as a whole or from each individual flow. And so if I, let me go ahead, I don't think I showed this in the last video, so let me do a quick tour. I just hit Control I, or you can get to this information from File, Project Info, where you can set some information at the top level, the project info, so the title of your project, the composer, lyricist, etc. And you can also set information by flow. So for these, I'm only using a couple of things right now where I've got the title. I'm using the subtitle to indicate the date that a song was revised, and I'm using work number to populate that box in the top right corner.
Great. So
this is where you set all the information that will then get populated into these fields. So if you want to create a field, let's make a new little text box. Let's say I create a box here. The first thing you should know about this, because this is non-obvious and can cause things to look funny if you don't do it right, there are these things called constraints here. This box right now is currently constrained to all 4 sides of this page, but what we want is for it to, let's say you resize the page later to, I don't know, 11 by 17, like a horizontal tabloid, a very bizarre format for a piano vocal score, but hey, you never know. You want to keep this box, because it's on the left, locked to the left side. So you want to keep this on here. If you uncheck this, then it's going to maintain the width that it currently has and then just like stay on the left side. If you keep this on, then it's going to lock that side to be the same distance to that. So like the box will expand and get really big. And I have had this cause confusion for me in the past where my boxes get kind of out of whack. So you just want to be a little careful about what constraints each of your boxes is supposed to have.
Okay.
So in this case, I want it to maintain the distance to the top and the distance to the left, and I don't want it to change in those directions.
So for clarity,
yes,
what it's locking is the distance between the margin of the paper and the box.
Yes.
Not the box's size and shape.
Yes, I will say that this tool is still a little bit confusing to me, and I feel like it's an area of improvement that Dorico can probably do.
You hear that, Dorico? You've got a
Yeah.
note.
Yeah. So generally, if something is on the left side, it's going to have these constraints, and if it's on the right side, it's going to have these constraints. If it was in the footer, you would swap the top one for the bottom one, basically. All right, so you've got a text box. If you double click into it, you will be able to add some text, and you can right click in there, and you have access to all of your what are called tokens. So in this case,
I was thinking I was going to have to like add code for a moment. This is better.
Yes, tokens. Yes. I feel like variable, I as a tech nerd, I'm like, it's a variable, but no, it's a token. All right, so in this case, I'm going to use flow info other information for a moment. This is something I've been considering adding in the header is a cue. So let's say the cue is, let's see, this is the opening of my show, like lights up. Lights up. Apply. So that is in the project info for the flow. I set that. Let's hit apply. Actually, before we leave, there's a couple more things I want to show here. So this copy page layout at the top, if I zoom out for a moment, you can see that right now my left and right page templates are different from each other. I'm going to copy what I did on the left to the right using this button. Cool. And now I can hit apply and close. Now, the change that I made, that box doesn't show up right now because there is text in there. Cue lights up. Oh, it's because I have a page override. That's a great example. Remove page override. There we go.
We see it in action.
We see it in action. So let me move my staves out of the way once again, just to make sure that we can see that box. Great. So there we have a cue. And so this is something that I plan to add throughout my show when we have cues, is populate the cue for every song into that project info window, and then it will fill in here. Let's talk about paragraph styles, because you can see that the contents of my various boxes have all sorts of different formatting. And one way that Dorico handles the layout of those things as lightly as possible for the user is to have a library of paragraph styles. So up here in the library menu, we can go to paragraph styles. And let's see. So right now, let's talk about this box over here, the one in a square, work number. So I created this paragraph style that I called work number. It inherited its formatting from default text. So I essentially hit default text, I hit duplicate here. It started with that same thing, and then I overwrote a couple of things. I overwrote a font, a size, and added a border, and changed some alignment. And from there, basically, let me go back into the template page, or the page template set. Zoom in, and inside that work number box, it's a little hard to select the right one when they're on top of each other, so I'll just drag it out of the way. So you can see when I select that text, in this little paragraph style drop down, I have work number selected. So I can choose a different format if I wanted to.
I see.
And I don't have to go through my whole score to change that, 20 times if I want to change the formatting of a given type of text. The same is true for throughout the score. Let me close that and discard that change. This text right here, this dialogue text. Let's say I decided halfway through that I want this to be size 10 instead of size 12. If all of them are the dialogue paragraph style that I've created, then I can go into paragraph styles, change it, and it will change for my entire show. And because I have all of my songs in this one project, that's the power of this, is global control over some of this stuff.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, cool. So paragraph styles is something that will have application both to individual, we are outside, we're in write mode, right? So we're in a flow, we're in write mode, and we want to change something that involves a paragraph style. We make that change, and we can do that, and it'll affect just that flow, or will it affect the whole score? Do you have to be in engrave mode in order to affect the whole score?
You do not have to be in engrave mode to affect the whole score. Right. If you make a change in paragraph styles, which you can make a change in any of these modes, I think. Setup. Yeah, that doesn't go
So it
away.
Just becomes global when you do it within paragraph styles. Beautiful.
Correct.
So here's a question
yes.
too. What if I wanted to change the dialogue size of just this one instance? That also doable?
Yep. Yes, if you double click on this text, that same thing comes up. Right now, this one is set to default text. I should change that one to dialogue because that's what it is. But you can overwrite it in here just by making an adjustment. And that does not change, that does not propagate back to your paragraph styles.
Beautiful. Lovely.
Indeed.
Oh, I like
and
that.
Like you can also like locally in here be like, I want my character names to be bold. Unfortunately, there's no way to set a paragraph style, as far as I know, to be like, I want this text to be dialogue bold and I want this text to be dialogue not bold, and have those be two separate paragraph styles that apply to the same text box. I don't think that's a thing. And so for that reason, I'm purposefully avoiding putting bold on the character names.
Sure.
It's a really subtle thing, but yeah.
But worth noting.
Anyway.
Great.
Yes, definitely worth noting, but paragraph styles are great. Using them in conjunction with your page templates and all of that is really going to be your friend. You could also control alignment of the text as well in the paragraph style. So like this title text is center aligned, and so is and this like composer-lyricist stuff knows to be right aligned. That's set inside paragraph styles.
Great.
Okay, I actually realized I skipped over something fairly fundamental about this section that I want to talk about now, and that is system and frame breaks. So this is something very common for like if you really want to space out text or make sure that the big blocks of text in your dialogue is like in a place that works. Here you can see that this one's just too long for the page, so I'm gonna add a little line break there. So let's say this was supposed to be like right here. And I was like, well, this is a problem. I just want that bar to start a new line. You go to engrave mode, and you have these system and frame breaks available to you. So if you create a system break, that bar, ooh, something funky happened here. Oh, is it because I did staff spacing? Yes.
Oh.
There we go. So that went to a new bar, or a new system rather. And I think there's also a system break here from before, which is why that is now a single bar system.
Cute.
But that's how you would do it. And so you can also select you can't select these while you're in the staff spacing mode. So let me go back here. I can delete that system break and the bar goes back to where it was. If you want a frame break, you can do that as well. So a frame break, you can think of like a page break. Create frame break, and that bar moves to the next page. So now this page only has 3 bars, and it breaks and goes to the next bar. And there's my block of text at
Beautiful.
the top. This is definitely like something to do at the end when you know like your musical content is ready. And at the very end, there's this button called Lock Layout, which will add system and frame breaks at all of the breaks that currently exist. And it will basically lock your bars into place. And so that if you then hand off that music to an ensemble and then there's a little change, it will like minimally affect the neighboring stuff, and it won't like relay out a whole thing. So it's good to do a lock layout right at the very end. And if you hit reset layout, it will delete all of your system breaks and all of your frame breaks, so you can start fresh.
Okay. Great to know.
Yeah. And then there's this move to previous system and move to next system, which is maybe a little bit more intuitive if you're not like as comfortable with like the concept of the system and frame breaks. It'll basically create system and frame breaks for you say move that bar to the next system. So there's the system break that it created.
Oh, nice. Two ways to do it.
Yes, indeed. All right. Conscious of time, I think I need to move on to the next topic, which is play mode. But before I do you have any questions about engrave mode?
I don't think so. That was very comprehensive. I scanned over the questions I had coming in, and I think you got them all.
Sweet. All right. Let's move into play mode. Um, so actually, before I even do that, let's talk about playback in write mode. Um, so generally, when you're writing this, I think most composers will want to hear what they put in. The transport controls are up at the top here. So here's your play, and you have rewind to the beginning of the flow. The trick here is that your playhead is actually invisible. And so you don't actually know where it's going to play from when you hit the play button. So I actually don't recommend using that necessarily. I recommend using a key command which is the letter P, which is play from selection. So I pretty much always will be like, I want to start from here. And then if I hit play, you get your playback. And I just hit the space bar to stop it. Or, if you're playing, you can just hit the stop button up here.
Intuitive. Good. And is that always from a note, or can you do that from like a bar line?
You can do it from a bar line.
Cute.
Yeah. Do I have... Let me go to something with a full score. Ooh, and this is a good opportunity for me to demonstrate how to get around fast inside Dorico. So if you're in a project that has lots of flows, the best way to get to jump far away is to you can get to it, I think, under edit, go to bar, or control G is how I usually get there. And then you basically can say, I want to go to flow. Let's see, Magic of a Moment has lots of instruments in it. I'm going to go to flow 3, bar 1, hit OK, nice. And here we go. So now I'm at Magic of a Moment. I'm going to switch to galley view. One of my favorite features for playback, which is the fastest way to selectively hear only the instruments you want, is that if you select, a couple of instruments, like here, I have just selected my strings. There are 5 of them. If I hit play now, it's only going to play the strings. Beautiful. So it's not playing my piano right now.
And in order to select more than one instrument?
That was, I'm holding shift while basically clicking there and then there.
That will be familiar to Sibelius and Finale users. That's great.
Yes. Or I think it's control if you want to do, 3 of them. Yeah. Stop. There is also this button up at the top here, Show Mixer. This allows you to globally turn on and off. You can solo and mute every instrument in your project. So if you don't want to have to deal with selecting everything specifically, you can globally do it here. But usually on the fly, I'm like, what do these two sound like? And I'll do it that way.
Right.
Another feature I want to point out with playback, which I totally, when I heard about this feature, I was like, I'm never going to use that. And I use it freaking all the time when I'm composing, is scrub playback, which is control or command space bar. And what that's going to do is show up with a playhead at your cursor, and you can basically just move it around to listen to the notes at that moment. So you can hear what the harmony sounds like, or, be like, oh, where does something sound weird? Oh, that's where it sounds weird. And then you can kind of go in. So let me quickly demo that. Control space. So you can go wherever you want. I think that's a really cool feature.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So that's how I use Playback in write mode. And then if you want to do customizations to the sounds in your instruments, that's what play mode is all about. So over on the left here, you have these two tabs. You have a track inspector and a VST and MIDI. When you are adding instruments, when you are adding instruments, you want to start in the VST and MIDI area. Basically, these are the instruments that I have loaded into my project to like assign to my various instruments. Let me back up and add some context here. For those who are looking at this and saying, this looks complicated and I don't want to deal with it.
It does.
You don't have to do any of this. When you start up Dorico, it will automatically load up a playback template so that if you put a violin in the project, it will sound like a violin. So you don't have to touch any of this. What I'm showing you right now is for those who are like, I don't like the sound of that violin. I want a different violin. Or I want to make tweaks to the violin sound. You can change those here. Or for example, I don't like the default vocal because it doesn't have a very great attack. It's very like choiry and like washy, and so I have changed all of my vocals to be like saxophones or woodwind instruments. So here, this is Ramsey. If I go back to the track inspector for a moment, here is the instrument that I am using right now. This is one of the ones that I have added in this rack, and I can add a new instrument in the rack with that plus symbol there. But it is using the second iteration of this Halion Sonic instrument, and it is using channel 6, and that's important here. When we open up Halion Sonic, you can see that there's 16 different slots here for different instruments. And so 6 is the instrument that I'm using for this track, which is Mrs. Ramsey, and that is an oboe. This instrument, Halion Sonic, is the like main instrument that comes with Dorico, but you can use any type of virtual instrument you have. I know a lot of people coming from other programs are using Note Performer. You might have the Garriton Library or East West or Contact, whatever it is. You can load up your virtual instrument in here and use that. I'm not gonna get into the details.
Yeah, that's lovely because this is scaring me.
Yes, this is just to give you a sense of like how you would change the sound of an instrument is in where I got to with that is this edit instrument button right here, and then looked at channel 6 for this track.
I think anyone familiar with a DAW program will be fine here. It's pretty intuitive otherwise.
Yes. So there's a lot of depth here. For those who are excited about like coming from the DAW world, like there's this key editor here where it's basically that piano roll view, and you can view MIDI notes that way. Let's see. There's one that has information in it. I won't spend any time talking about the nuances of this, but if that looks exciting to you, you should dig in and play around with it.
Great. I do see a tempo track up top.
Yes, the tempo track is great, and that is accessed through the key editor. That's just like a little preview, basically. Okay. On this lane on the bottom, which is currently looking at the velocity of the MIDI note, I can change that to be tempo, and here we have our little tempo track, so you can kind of hover over and see what the tempo is at any given moment if you follow the line. It's like previewing it with this number over here. Yeah, and like fermatas automatically, like fermatas and retardandos and all of that will play back, and you have the ability to control like how long a fermata takes in playback.
Beautiful.
Let's click this note, for example, and go to write mode. Where's that note? That note. Boop. So this fermata duration normal. I can make it very short. I can make it, oh, that changes the normal. Let's see. Here we go. Hold duration percentage, for example. This is what changes the playback in Dorico. So
Nice.
it's got all sorts of these things in the properties panel on the bottom. If you really want to get into that. Yeah. Any other questions about playback?
Scanning, scanning, scanning. No. No, that's great.
Sweet. The last two things we're going to do, a quick tour in print mode, and then we'll try importing a music XML and see how that goes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in print mode, you have your layouts on the right, and whichever one you want to print, you select. On the right-hand side, you have basically two options. There's a printer. So if you have like a software printer, like this Adobe PDF, and you want to make a PDF, you can do it that way, or you can physically print to a printer. Graphics will also let you make PDFs. So there's kind of two different options there. But you can also select other image formats if you want to do that. Over here you can pick grayscale or color, whatnot. The thing I like about the graphics side is that you have some automated file naming options. So if I click in here, here is the file name recipe, and you can see that you can like click these ingredients here and be like, I want it to be the project name _ layout name, whatever. And you can create your little thing, and then you can export basically all your flows, and it will generate those files with the correct formatting if you so choose.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
So you can do all of your flows at once.
Yes, and this is like one of the things that's really cool about having all the songs in a project is like you don't have to like open, 20 files and save each one as a PDF. Hit cancel on that, and then here's where you can pick, I want to do the whole thing, I want to do specific pages, and then flows. I love that they added this feature, separate file for each flows. So like before, I was basically doing a PDF of an entire score and then having to like separately in Adobe, split them into songs, but you don't have to do that anymore. This checkbox lets you export them all at the same time as individual things.
Great. Great.
Yeah, so that one's super straightforward. Printing.
I love it.
Yeah.
Easier.
Do you have any questions about this?
No, you hit all those.
Great. Well, let's close this. I'm gonna not save those changes. The hub is gonna pop back up here. Okay, so here we are at the Dorico hub. Oh, while we're here, one thing we didn't talk about last week, because I went file new and I started with a totally blank thing. For someone who's interested in starting from a template, there are a lot of templates that are built in, and you can also create your own. So I have a musical theater song template that I made. There's another video on my channel where I do a tour of that template. But let's say I want to start from that template and have some information in here. Best song ever by me, of course. And you can choose some of your defaults here. Let's say it's going to be in 4/4 and you want it to be in A flat major. Cool. Create project.
Gorgeous.
Oh, interesting. My template has C major built into the template. I didn't know that was the case. Well, it did 4/4. All right. There we go. There's our A flat major. So I guess that because of I had that in the template, it overwrote what I said in the template. Anyway, so here we start with our like this starts with bars because that was in my template. And if I go into page view, you can see the layout of my header. So that's how you would create something from scratch with a template. And let's do an import from Music XML.
Let's see how it goes, friends. I know this is a big
Let's see
question
how
for
it
y'all.
goes. We haven't tried this yet, so let's. I've done this personally with other things, but let's do import Music XML. Toss it in here. Open.
This is an a cappella arrangement from college. This will be fun.
Sweet. All right, so we are creating all new players here. Import flows. It's not letting me select anything specific, but let's see if I hit OK here. All right.
Okay.
Were there lyrics in that file?
There were lyrics in that file, yeah.
Interesting. I think Music XML is supposed to import lyrics.
It should. I'm curious about that though. That could be an XML of an older version. To be completely honest, that was 2 Sibeliuses ago. So who's to say?
That's fair. Yeah, but you can see that it correctly imported. It created players. It created tenor 1, 2, baritone, and bass. These other two were in my template already. It added that as a second flow. So if you're importing something to a brand new project, you can usually just delete the first flow and be done with that. Delete flow. And so then here you have your arrangement, and it's got the notes and slurs, and we suspect that the lyrics didn't come through because old XML version. But there you go. The other thing that you should be aware of importing XML is that it doesn't propagate page layouts and bar breaks and all of that from Music XML into this. There's reasons why that's a lot more complicated on the back end. So just be aware when you're importing something, you may have to do some go into engrave mode and add your system breaks where you want them.
Sure. So the other thing I'm seeing here on that import that's interesting is even though we have tenor staves, it is treating those tenor staves as though that's a standard G clef. That looks like it's a middle C, essentially, because that should all be unison at the top. But how will it play? Will it play it as a middle C, or will it play it down the octave?
We don't have playback right now because we imported. We basically started this project from an XML. So this is another good demo of, I'm going to load a default playback template for a moment. Playback template. That was from the play menu. Let's see. There's a whole bunch of things. I'll just load that one. Okay. I'm playing on my MIDI keyboard to see. So all three of these have loaded up with a vocal sound.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It's just very quiet.
Unison. Yeah?
Yes. Yes. So this is doing, it's with the octave below clef, it looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Although the octave below a middle C would be, yeah, so this might just be a nuance in the Music XML export. So Music XML does a pretty good job. There's always going to be some amount of cleanup
Always.
when you get it in there, but yeah, so that's how the process for an import goes. Did we miss
That's no
anything?
problem. Let me scan through the questions real fast, see if there's anything we need to hit. Oh, how do you hide or unhide staves? We didn't talk about that.
Ah, yes. Let me go back to, well, actually, I can use this as a demo. Um, we are going to do that in layout settings. So like if you're looking for a particular setting, or layout options rather, under library, engraving options, layout options, like these 5 menus are generally going to contain the options that apply globally across your whole project. And it just so happens that the hide staves is in layout options. So let's see. Let me orient myself here for this. Um, I need a layout where I have everything. Okay, piano vocal is showing all of these. It's showing all of these vocals and piano. So it looks like this setting is actually already applied because you can see right now that tenor 1, 2, baritone, and bass are being shown, but in this piano vocal, there's also a lead and a piano, and they're not visible here. So hide empty staves is already active. So I'm gonna go to layout options. I did Control Shift L is my shortcut to get there. On this piano vocal layout, I can go to staves and systems, and where is it? Hide empty staves. Somewhere in here. I think vertical spacing. Yes, it's under vertical spacing. Oh, it's actually never. Why are those? So if I select all systems and hit apply, oh, that's why. You can either remove instruments at a flow level, so you'll notice that if I click on this Southern Cross flow right here, let me undo that empty staves change for a moment. So it's currently not hiding staves, but these are not shown because they are not checked for this flow. So if I add them to the flow, now they show up, lead and piano, but the staves are empty. So if I wanted to hide the empty staves, I can go into my layout options, go to vertical spacing, let's say after first system, apply. And so now in the first system they show up as blank, but then in the second system they are not there.
Ooh, gorgeous, and you don't have to go through and do it manually.
You sure do not.
Heck yeah.
Woo.
Okay. Looks like we only have a couple other smaller questions in here. Importing and exporting MIDI files or sound files. So can you export into MP3, to MIDI, to WAV files? What do we have as options?
Yeah, we've got a bunch of different options. Flows is an option. The use case I think for this that I recently heard about for musical theater is, let's say you're working on an entire show and the orchestrator needs to work on a song. It's kind of hard when all the songs are in the same show. So you might export a flow for a given song over to the orchestrator, they work on it for a while, and then you can import that flow back in when they're done and kind of delete the original one in your file. That's the use case for that. Audio is an option. I generally use MP3, but you also have a couple other formats available to here. You also, this is a cool one, export players as separate files. So if you're making tracks as a music director for like your vocalists to practice, this is a great feature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, so that's the audio. You have the option to export MIDI.
Great.
And Music XML if you want to get this into a DAW or into another notation program. You can export a tempo track
Hmm.
and like load that into a DAW. So if you've like tweaked this just right and you want to start a project with like just the right tempo, you've got that. And then lyrics. And I've actually never tried exporting text. I assume that's all the text boxes throughout the thing. Um,
Interesting.
but
Okay.
lyrics, that's a really cool one that you can export all of the lyrics in the show.
Yeah. Would you be able to import MIDI?
Yes, you can. And I have a video on my channel of how I do that. So I will
Yeah.
direct you to that one.
I love it. We'll say it's in the
Yeah.
description somewhere.
Yes, I'll put that one in the description for sure.
Beautiful. Okay, great. And
Hmm.
then do. That was it. You answered all the questions, Julie. Woo!
Woo! That was a whirlwind.
Yeah, you know what? In a combined like 2 hours and 20 minutes total, you just gave a master class in the beginning of Dorico. Like, this is how you get started. This is how you do it. We are all so appreciative. I mean, I guess I can't speak for the world. I'm just assuming. I'm so appreciative of all that work you
Yay!
just did. That's gorgeous. Gorgeous work. Thank you.
Thank you for coming along on this journey with me. I really enjoy this program. I mean, it, like any program, has some quirks and like some things that you have to get used to. But in my experience, compared to my time in Finale, like, uh, some of these time saving things are just such a game changer in terms of like layout and like being able to globally change something instead of having to spend an hour doing manual dragging or selecting every text box or whatever it is to do all of that. So
As someone who works in Sibelius and has to create a new version of a score of a show that has existed for a long time, I am dreading going through the engraving process. This was so much nicer, so much better. The global change, the idea of flows in one project. Ugh. Yeah. I'm I can just say I know where I will be switching to when I am ready to make the switch. So
yay,
thank you.
excellent, sweet. Any final words that you want to say?
I just want to say thank you all to anyone who stuck with us through this whole process. You are
Yes.
troopers.
Yes, indeed. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you found value in this. Please leave a comment below if you have any further questions or you want to share any cool Dorico tips that you have learned. So, awesome. Thank you all so much. Bye.
Bye!